So these two lenses are the same, except for one key difference. And one is the common third-party full manual lens for Fujifilm, while the other is, finally, a third-party lens with autofocus support. And so I am back with another review, and thank you very much to all of you who left nice comments under my previous reviews and subscribed for more. It does mean a lot, so thank you. And if you're new here, you should consider subscribing too, because there is good stuff here. And if you subscribe now, you're going to get one more review, like now.
This one.
Okay, did you do it? Amazing. And if you didn't do it, I'll make you change your mind at the end of this video. Here's a review. So you see, for the first 8-9 years of development of the X system, Fujifilm never allowed any other company to access the blueprints and develop autofocus lenses. There had been attempts to reverse engineer the system, but they were never officially endorsed by Fujifilm. And because of this, only a handful of companies were investing in developing for the Fujifilm X mount. And if you wanted to buy a lens from one of these companies, it would have been a full manual lens only, no autofocus. Now, personally, I never had any problem using manual focus lenses, but this was limiting nonetheless. One other issue was that because those lenses had no electronic communication with the camera, EXIF data was not saved with the files. So, for example, in Lightroom, all photos shot with those lenses would appear as shot at 50mm f1, which is probably a minor issue for most, but still annoying. Now, this has finally changed in 2020, with Fujifilm allowing third parties to create autofocus lenses for the system. Now, at the time of recording, the list of lenses with autofocus support of Fujifilm X series cameras is still fairly short. And the problem is that each brand focused on the same 3 focal lengths. So the offer is not even varied. They're almost all around the 23, 33 and 50mm focal length. The one that stands out and comes from a company that already developed manual lenses for the X system is the Samyang 12mm f2. Now, it's Rokinon in the US, but it's the same brand. And I bought the manual 12mm as my first lens for Fujifilm, aside of the kit lens, back when I had the X-T1, and I never regretted it. The original 12mm has always been one of the most well-regarded third-party lenses for Fujifilm. And if you look at any Facebook group or you talk with any photographer about the best lenses for the system, these Samyang 12mm would always come top of the list. And so, of course, when I was approached to test this autofocus version for this video, which is not sponsored by the way, I immediately said yes. So let's go a little bit in details and see the features of this lens and the difference with the previous model. The 12mm is roughly equivalent to 18mm on full frame, so it's still considered an ultra-wide angle. It is mainly designed for landscape, cityscape and astrophotography, but I will show you how it can be used for other purposes as well in this video. The reason why this lens has always been highly regarded is that you can achieve great results and obtain sharp and clear images, even at the widest aperture of f2, though edges may look slightly soft until you reach f4. And I personally always felt that it makes Fujifilm colors pop even more thanks to the Nano NCS lens coating. Now, I am not much of a tech person, so I can't talk in details about this coating, but it just feels good. You look at the images and they have that certain, je ne sais quoi that makes them very special. But what you have probably already noticed by now is that there is no aperture ring, something that is almost a staple for Fujifilm lenses. The way you control the aperture when you mount this lens is via the dials on the camera. And by default it's the front dial, but it can be programmed any way you want. And frankly, I thought I'd be very much annoyed with the lack of aperture ring, and I had already slammed Fujifilm when they released the new kit lens for the GFX system, because it didn't have the ring, and it was slowing me when I was shooting street photography. But maybe now I am used to it, so it actually didn't feel much of a hindrance with this lens. And once you have used this enough time to develop muscle memory and know which direction closes or opens the aperture, you won't be slowed down at all. Now, sometimes I wish I could see all my settings without looking at the screen and just glancing at the camera, but even Fuji lenses sometimes don't show the aperture values on the rings, so looking at the screen is something you may have to do anyway. And there is actually an advantage if you use the X-T4 or more recent cameras. Because the aperture is now controlled electronically, the setting is retained when you switch between photo and video, and you don't have to readjust every time. But the aperture ring is the first main difference between the new lens and the old. And when you see it next to it, the other obvious difference is that the old model had the focus distance indicators as well. But it is no surprise that these are gone, as Fujifilm did the same when releasing new versions of their 23 and 35mm lenses. But if you mainly shoot astrophotography though, these are very precise actually, so you may want to grab the old model. But if you shoot astro, you're not going to use autofocus anyway, so yeah, that's that. Now externally, the other key difference is that the new model has weather sealing, and that is fantastic to have. Here in the UK, we are always at the mercy of the ever-changing weather, so the sealing helps a lot. And lastly, the design. The old model had this peculiar design that helped keeping any filter edge out of the way, so you wouldn't have any vignette. And the new model seems to have dropped this feature to go for a more common cylindrical design. But this is actually not the case. The filter thread is reduced from 67 to 62mm, while the diameter is only a couple millimeters smaller, so you can still safely use filters and even stack two slim filters together. Now, internally, the build is very similar, same elements and optical construction, but the aperture in the new model is slightly larger, with 7 blades instead of the 6 blades of the old one, and this makes for better bokeh and starbursts. Also, it has the same minimum focusing distance of 20 cm or 0.6 feet, which is quite short and could be really helpful in many cases. And by the way, the image remains sharp at close distance. And now finally, let's talk about the autofocus. So the linear motor on this new model is quiet and smooth. I have no complaints with that at all. And I think I never missed a shot, even in a fast-paced environment like in the streets of London. But it is a bit slow to start though. So from when you switch on the camera to when you will be able to shoot, it will probably take about 2 seconds, and that could be enough to miss a moment. But hopefully this is something that could be improved via firmware updates. But if you know it takes a little longer to start, you simply need to make the habit of switching on as soon as you feel that you could be needing to shoot. I don't think it's a big deal, and like I said, I never missed a shot so far. And I am really glad to have the ability to use autofocus on this lens. It is the exact same 12mm I loved before, with the same image quality, and now I can use it with autofocus, or back button focus, and weather sealing. So now let's get to actually using this lens. As you can imagine, a 12mm or 18mm equivalent is the perfect lens for landscape, cityscape, or even astrophotography. And this is actually my main go-to lens for astro. And you can see that this lens doesn't show much barrel distortion, so when you shoot architecture, the lines are fairly straight and not curvy. But as fantastic genres as those are, they hardly make for a great showcase of the autofocus feature. So, as we often do here, let's put this to the test in the streets. So, an ultra-wide-angle lens can be a very creative tool for street photography, as you can have lots of leading lines to play with. But it can also be very tricky to use because it captures so much in a scene. It could be hard to go minimalistic, especially in a busy city like London, because there is always someone who enters in the frame. But an ultra-wide angle is great because it gives you context, as you can show a lot of the environment. But for the same reason, you may actually struggle to achieve a photo you are pleased with. And if you are a tall person or a short person and shoot at eye level, you may often have converging lines that you will have to correct in post-production, unless that is exactly the effect you want. So what I tried to do in the streets with this lens was create layers. Now, let me explain. See here, I'm providing context by showing you the entire scene. And I want to photograph a skater doing their tricks, so here I am waiting to capture one. But the scene looks empty now. What's the point of shooting with an ultra-wide when I could have done a better job, a much better job actually, at focusing on my subject with a tighter zoom? So let's capture some more action, because this place was actually busy, so let's show it. But even then, now that we've captured the action, this still feels quite one-dimensional. What it probably needs is like a foreground element as well. So yes, I think this is it. Maybe not a jaw-dropping photo, but it does showcase what I'm trying to achieve with an ultra-wide angle in the street. Now, obviously, when you have such a wide angle, you may want to get closer to your subject. But how close is actually close? I don't think I really understood this myself until I took this photo. You see the man on the right? We were actually touching shoulders. And yet, I still managed to have persons on different layers in my photo. So, this close. And here are more photos straight out of camera that I shot with this 12mm lens. much filming with this lens, but let me quickly add some information here. This lens, the same as the previous model, is not stabilized and relies on in-body stabilization. But being this an ultra-wide angle, it doesn't suffer much from hands shaking, and it shows a lot less movement by default anyway. And this lens is also very light, and it's 212 grams, so it can be very easily balanced on any gimbal with no stress to the motor at all. I found that there is some focus breathing sometimes when shooting video, but nothing that is too noticeable or displeasing. And so, like I promised in the beginning, I'm sure that this was of value to you, and I have now convinced you to subscribe for even more gear reviews. And because you came here to watch a video on this Samyang/Rokinon ultra wide angle, I'm sure you will like this other video too. This one on screen right now. Click on it and enjoy. Thank you so much, and I see you soon. Bye.